Well, good morning, everyone. It's an absolutely beautiful day here. This is a lovely Wednesday at the end of June, our last June week. It's so very wonderful here, and I hope that everybody is outside enjoying the great summer weather wherever you might be. I just think it's just beautiful. All right, so I want to thank you very much for joining us all the time on our Facebook and YouTube presentations. You will find us usually Monday to Friday at 10:30 a.m. And we just absolutely think it's great when you send us a message and let us know that you're there. Thank you for your comments, your loves, and your likes. That's awesome. And I see Robin is already on. Oh, you did it. Fantastic. She's here live. That is marvelous. Thank you, Robin. All right, a special few shout outs to some people who have been watching us regularly and letting us know you're out there. So a special hi to Nancy C, Ann L, Sandy A, and I hope your anniversary went well, Teresa S, Chris L, Lana T, and our Robin S, Pia Gray, Ruth C, Patty G, who's from Vermont, which is lovely, Tina B, Maureen C, Loanne F, Carol D, who, surprisingly enough, she's doing what I'm going to talk about on this show, and I do wish you a happy birthday, Vivian H, Glenda I, Karen L, Teresa W, Jean J, Mary Z, Betty L, and just a quick special shout out to, I think it was Adrian at Bernina, who was watching the Sandy Lock Homes on last Monday, and thanks. All right, so, well, this is Wacky Wednesday, and we are going to be making a travel laundry bag. We're going to do it in two parts because I think to sew all those seams for you in one show is probably going to take too long. So we're going to show you how to make the body, and then we'll show you how to put the base and the top on next week. So this week it is the travel laundry bag. And this is by AngelaPingel.com or Angela Pingel, but you can find her at angelapingel.com. And we're going to use her pattern today to make a travel laundry bag. So of course it is travel season. And whether you're doing a road trip or whether you're camping or where you're flying off to an exotic locale, maybe, somewhere fun, or if you're taking a destination, a trip, a once of a lifetime thing, you may need this little travel bag. It's a little bag that keeps all your delicates and safe and sorted away. When those dirty socks, we'll put it in the bag and then we don't have to worry about them. You've got them in pairs and away you go. It's wonderful. All right, so let's look at what we need to make this travel laundry bag. But I think you should have a joke first. Yeah, I think. So how can you tell elephants love to travel? Well, Carol, Ruth, I think they always have their trunks packed. Yeah, and they're ready to go. One more before we go into the bag making. Where do sharks go on vacation? Dun, 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 dun. They go to Finland. Yeah, okay. Enough jokes for the moment. Let's have a look at our project today. Thank you to Tyler who set us up and got all our camera views and everything. So this is the travel laundry bag by Angela Pingel Design. That's it. So inside, well, on the outside, it tells us some things that we need. We need some bias tape. We need a feature fabric print. We need an accent print. And I have selected for my projects that I'm showing you today, Tilda fabrics. You also need some mesh, which we're doing the ByAnnie's lightweight mesh fabric. It doesn't have to be really hard, not like that mesh bag that we made on Simple Summer Sewing a couple summers ago where we used the pet screening. This is softer, so it's easy to sew and also easier to pack. We need a bottom fabric. They suggested canvas, but I found some really nice denim that we had here for the bottom and the handles. And then we need some drawstring cord. So I picked out the white one because I thought that would go the nicest with my fabric. And of course we need a little toggle. All right. So as always, they tell us, read the pattern carefully, top to bottom, before you start. Because when I started, I thought, oh, okay, you know, put things right side together, sew them up. Oh, great. No. She says you got to put sometimes in here, you got to put the wrong sides together when you sew. So it's quite an interesting little project. So first off, when you open up the pattern, you're going to find your travel laundry bag bottom. So what I did was I photocopied that page and made a template. And then it says to very carefully take your denim or whatever fabric, sorry, you might be using canvas, and you put your circle on a fold, trace it, and cut it out. Fantastic. So then your circle looks like this. So there's our bottom of our bag. Now we've cut this out, but we won't use it this time. We'll be using it next week. So there's our bottom. Out of this other fabric, I'm going to take another piece and I'm going to make a handle for the bag. So I don't know if you can see in the pattern that it hangs up on the wall. How do I do that so you can see it? Maybe I'll go back to the front. So it hangs. So you need to have a little handle that's attached to the cinch top so you can hang it, which I think is kind of a good thing too. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. The denim I picked out for is the handles and the bottom of the bag, and we will come back and use that next week to put the bottom in. In the meanwhile, we are going to take our feature fabric, and she tells us how to cut it. We're going to make a strip of our feature fabric, our accent fabric, and our meshing. And you'll see I've already cut out the pieces, but yeah, make them all the same length. The sides, you know what? It doesn't really matter how long you make your strips. The only thing you need to do is make sure that they're all the same length and the length that she asks for, because then it'll fit our circular bottom when we go to put it in. All right, so I read my pattern very carefully and then did it wrong the first time. So in big bold letters, our lovely lady says, with wrong sides together, sew the accent fabric to the feature fabric and press the seam to one side. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to take our feature fabric, we're going to take our accent fabric, and we are going to sew them wrong sides together. So we'll put that face down, put that here. So you're going to notice then that our seam that we make is going to be on the outside of our bag. And I thought for a while, like, why would you do that? But then I thought that makes the bag, and I'll show you my started one. It makes the bag inside all seamless. And so you can't catch anything on the inside of the bag. All the seams are on the outside and it's smooth on the inside. And it's really cool. So yes, please read the pattern carefully. So what we're going to try and construct today is this part of the bag. It's the body, and it's kind of fun. So you got to remember, put them wrong sides together to get started. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to our close-up on our sewing machine. And today, because it's up here all the time, I am using again the Luminaire XP3. Let's wake it up and tell it we want to center our stitches. I have our 1/4 inch foot on, and of course you can pin this. I'm just going to hold them together and go crazy. All right, let's put our foot down. We got our 1/4 inch piecing foot on. We are going to stand on that big pedal and we are going to get started. And she recommends, sorry, sorry, dude. She recommends back stitching at the beginning and the end. So I'm going to do that. And now we're going to go ahead again. Oh, I keep wanting to push the button, but I have a foot pedal. Aren't I just smart? Okay, so we are going to just put that seam together. And it's a nice long seam, but it's wrong sides together, so our seam turns out on the right side of the bag, which is very, very, I'm sorry, I got confused. I read that several times, had to bring my pattern in and said to Betty, whatever I'm doing, it's not right. And she said, well, did you put the wrong sides together, not the right sides together? And I looked at her like, oh, for God's sake, I don't even think I can read. Anyways, that is what we did. We finally got it going. And it's really easy because these are all just long, straight rows of stitching. And we just use that 1/4 inch. Don't worry too much whether you get an exact 1/4 inch or not, because believe it or not, we're going to cover this seam. So no one's even going to see this seam. We're going to make 3 seams, and only one of them is actually going to show on this. So just sew away and have a good time. It works pretty good. Right. That works absolutely wonderful. As we're getting close, we're going to make that little back stitch. Please don't worry if it doesn't come out to be exactly even at both ends, because she has us trim it right at the end so that it's all even. So there it is. We have one long stitch and it's got the right sides, the wrong sides together. So you'll see that our seam on here is smooth. There won't be anything to catch on your delicates or your smellies, whatever you're putting in there, socks or whatever. All right, next thing. Let's go back over here to the top for a second. Next thing is you take that bias binding that she told us to get. And for this project, I chose blue. On this one, I chose red. And you'll see that I use it to actually just cover over the 2 seams. All right, so let's do that. We're going to take this. She tells us to start with unfolding it and take that edge, first edge of the seam binding, line it up here, and we are going to actually sew. I'm going to do it. Yes, sew it in the fold or close to the fold, and then what happens is we actually fold it up and over and we cover up all the seams. So once we've got this, she tells us to press it. So we're going to press, I guess it doesn't really matter. Let's go this way. It seems to want to press upward. Okay, so we're going to press that. Now I'm just finger pressing because I did not bring an iron, which is silly. But I did it with just finger press. Okay, so there it is. Now, take our little binding and let's head off to make our next row of stitching. So here we are back at the sewing machine. We're going to open up our binding. And we're going to line that up. So now the 2 are, when I sew this time, I'm going to be sewing that seam down. All right, so there we go. Just line that up like that. So now I'm on the edge of that. I'm going to sew as close to that little edge where the binding is folded. Oh, my chair went away. Hang on. That's the one thing about putting wheels on everything, right? So again, you can pin all of this in place if you like. I'm just going to kind of freewheel, pull this fabric so it's smooth. And again, as I start, she asks us to back stitch. Okay, and then forward again. So again, we're using that holding on, and we're going as close to the line of the binding fold Doesn't have to be perfect either, again, because this is going to be hidden in the fold, just as long as we get the binding to cover that edge. All right. And when I purchased my bias binding, I kept it all as one length. That way I can use as much as I like, and I can cut it off at the end. So we're just going to lay it down there. I don't want to be right in the fold. I want to be just above the edge of the fold. I know the pattern says certain things, and I found trying to follow them didn't work as smoothly as I thought. So I kind of, as Anne does, sometimes rewrite the pattern to fit me. So this is a 1/4 inch, and that binding fold is just a little wider than that. So I'm not right in the fold line, but I'm following the fold line as I go. We're just about done. I know there's a lot of long stitching rows in this, but we'll try and get this body bag done for you today. And then next week we'll put the bottom and the casing for the string on the top and put the handle on, and you'll have a wonderful travel bag. Now, I was thinking about this too. So this is kind of fun. But what if you want to take this bag with your shower stuff? Would that be cool? I'm thinking maybe the bottom might be good if it was mesh. Anyways, thoughts. You know, these things percolate through your head as you sew. You think of other things that you can do with it. And I guess that's the one thing about making a pattern, is you can revise it to however you would like it to be. So because she said sew in the fold, but I found that was a little tough to get it to turn, and I actually took that line of stitching out. I find just above the line in the fold on the bias is better. Just want to get it down. When we hit the end, she wants us to back stitch, of course. Oh, and I forgot to mention I am using poly thread because this needs to have a little stretch to it. Right. Okay. All right, back to the front, and we'll trim that edge off. Oh, this is so much fun. Okay, so there it is. Our little casing is sewn on. I'm just going to trim off this extra of the bias. We're going to need it again on the next one. So let's just take my hat out of the way so you can see. All right, so there's our first seam with our bias binding. Now what we're going to do is actually take that bias binding, we're going to wrap it around that seam and lay it flat. We can actually don't worry about that part, just lay it flat. Ooh, look at us go, laying it flat. So you'll see now that it covers the stitches that we did before. So now we have no raw edges showing. We're just going to take a line of stitching and sew this bias top down into place. That looks kind of cool. Now, of course, I set it up with white thread, so this seam will show. On my other bag, I used white seam binding, so the seam didn't really show. But there we go. Just flipping it over, just going to take my foot and, of course, do the back stitch. And then we carry on. All right, so what I'm doing now is using the edge of the foot, not the 1/4 inch, but the outside edge of the foot. This one has a guide on it. And I just want to stitch this down flat. And we'll just zip along. Boy, that goes fast. I don't know how that looks on camera. Hope it doesn't look too ooey. But you'll see I've got a nice line of stitching coming along there. All right, so that covers off the seam. And I don't worry too much about covering things. Just as long as that seam is secure, it won't get a lot of pull on it because the bias binding is there. Let's see if we can get that folded to lie nicely here. There we go. Just tuck in and sew. And if you like the way it sits with a single line of stitching, you can do a line along the bottom too. All right. I gotta tell you, it's getting a little hot under this hat. I might have to take my hat off. And when I do that, I think we should have another joke. But let's get this seam sewn. Get your spot under there, dude. There we go. That little bump was where the seam binding was put together on the 45. So we had a little bump, but we're all good. This surely does move smoothly and fast. I could get in trouble with this machine. All right, we're coming to the end. Let's do that little back stitch like she asked us to do. And try to stay online, of course. Some of that will be hidden in the other seam that we're going to put on. All right, so here we go. So there's our binding sewed into place over top. And you know what? Because I did it in white, I might even be encouraged to do a little white one along here just to make it look matchy nice. Okay, but I can do that later. Let's talk about what happens next. All right, got to take the hat off, getting way too hot. Okay, now it's Hawaii, it's hot, you know. Okay, oh, a joke. So how do rabbits get to their holiday destinations? By airplane. Whoa, these are bad. I told my husband these ones this morning. He says, oh, well, you should get a few eye rolls out of that. All right. So again, wrong sides together, right? Wrong sides together. So the seam is on the outside. So the mesh then is our next project. There it is, meshing all the way along. Don't worry if there's a little extra sticking. Oh, you can't see that. Little extra on the end. Ooh, there it is. Because it will get trimmed in the next set. All right, I know these are long rows of stitching, so hang with me. We're going to do that next stitching row. Oh, change cameras. Oh, I did change cameras. Oh, I'm getting so good. All right, so here we go again. This time it's this mesh with the fabric, and I put it mesh side up because I really don't want it getting stuck on my feed dogs. That wouldn't be no good. Start out, do a few little back stitches. Come on. Okay, back up. Okay, fine. Back up. Okay, Machine and I are having a confrontation here. All right, we're going to sew the wrong sides together, mesh, and now the accent fabric. Believe it or not, in a couple more lines of stitching, we will have a bag. Just trying to make sure this mesh is a little slippery. It's kind of hard to pin, so you just have to keep on top that it stays relatively close together at the top. Right. But don't worry, we will cover that itchy little mesh, and it will be great. Okay, just making sure the mesh is even with our feature, or our accent fabric. So our feature fabric is on the bottom, then the accent fabric, and then the top is mesh. I think it's so that air can get in. What I was thinking, yeah, if you're going to do it, you could do a mesh bottom too, so that you've got, it could, you know, water could drip through it. I know when we did the vinyl mesh bags with the pet screening, we did have a mesh bottom, and I thought they would be perfect for when you put your bathing suit in, or if you're going into the showers at the pool or whatever, you put your shampoos and stuff in there and hang it. Might get a little damp on the things, but at least stuff would drain out the bottom. Okay, we're coming to the end. We're going to do a little back stitching. Perfect. Cut it off. Okay, let's go back to up top. Now, before I go any further, I want to trim off that very little edge of mine that is over the thing. Sometimes when you put in the mesh, it's a little, it stretches a little bit. So don't worry, because she said we again at the end will be trimming all of this up so it's all even. But I just want to take that off before I put the casing on. All right, there we go. Now that's done. So now, again, like we did before, we have a seam, and it looks like it wants to press toward the top again. So this time toward the mesh. Okay, so you take an iron and very gently, try not to melt your mesh. But I'm just going to finger press it to, because of course, no iron. Finger press that down. Okay, and we're going to do exactly the same as we did last time with the bias binding. So we'll take the bias binding and we're going to sew it just along the edge of the seam again. Are you ready? Back over here. I know long, close and long seams, but it's pretty straightforward once you get the idea that you're doing them wrong sides together rather than right. And then you put your seam binding on to cover the raw edge. Okay, are we ready? I think we're in. Let's step our foot down. Okay, and we get started. And we're going to back up a little. Now this time I do have the mesh on the bottom, and let's just see how, oh, it likes it. It says it's okay. Good. All right, so let's just line this up. And so not quite in the seam fold, but close to it. As close as to it as you can. Because we need it to actually bend on that fold line. All right, and we just make sure everything's all smoothed out. And away we go. I have to say, if you're having trouble with a pattern or following a pattern, we have some of the most wonderful people here at my sewing room that can read patterns, and they can tell you where you're what's expected next. And that's very helpful when you're doing a project for the first time, and maybe you're just having a little bit of trouble following what the person who wrote the pattern is saying. Sometimes the patterns, they think they've spelled it all out, and yet sometimes they've missed a step, and it's like, oh dear, what was I supposed to do? But anyways, we're doing great today. We have got this underway. So I hope everyone actually has some fun summer plans, maybe even plans to get out of the city of Calgary to get some water. They assure me that we should have our water back soon, but let's hope that wherever you're going, you have wonderful weather and lots of water and no restrictions. Oh, this is going good. You people are so good, audience, staying with me, because the next one we do is going to be different. So the first two that we do with the feature fabric to the accent fabric and the accent fabric to the mesh is done the same way, but the outside seam is not. So that's where we're going to change and do it slightly different. Then we don't put the wrong sides together. We do more of what we anticipate when doing a bag. Are you stuck? Oh, my little guy got stuck on my mesh. There we go. Just had to lift him up a little bit and get going again. Yeah, I should have started, but you can't see, so you're always going to run into that little mesh problem, because the mesh has to be underneath when we do the seam. All right, look at us go. Almost done. You guys are so good watching patiently. All right, to the end of the seam, and of course she says to back stitch. All right, there we go. Cut it. Perfect. All right, back over to the other camera. Boy, we're going back and forth a lot today. All right, there we are. We've got that. Now we're going to just cut this rest of the bias off because we've got more to use, but that's all I need for right now. So just going to trim that off. There we go. All right, last line of stitching for the main bag. We're just going to tuck everything together here. It's going to lay down so nicely over that. And we're going to do another line of stitching just to hold that down. All right, are we ready? Yeah. So if you're noticing, all of our seams are on the outside. Okay, here we go. Let's go and do this one. Camera, close up. Okay. Okay, so here comes our travel bag. Tuck our bias binding. Be good now. Good. Some days I do this better than other days, but there we go. Now we're ready to go. Okay, foot down. And do a little back stitch. Try not to be booby. I started off a little weird, but hopefully that will be in my seam so we won't notice it so much. All right, stay there while I get the rest of our... Okay, come on. You can do this. Lie down. There we go. And I'm just doing it not a 1/4 inch, but I got it about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And as I say, I would have normally done this in dark blue fabric, but hey, I had white in the sewing machine, so that's what we're using. It's kind of fun because we're going to use white cording and a white toggle, so may as well keep the white going. You can hide it with whatever color thread you like to match or contrast with your bias binding. Okay, come on, little buddy. Just be good now. There we go. You know, it's funny because the fabric one, the mesh and fabric lie down smoother than the two fabrics. I think it's just because it's easier, flexible to fold. All right, you guys are so good. I have another joke for you as soon as we finish this row. And then I'll show you, oh, see that little 1/4 inch guide wants to catch on my mesh. It's going okay with the feed dogs. It's just not liking that edge on the foot. Okay, here we go. Oops, see, it just keeps getting stuck. Okay, just got to keep that fold firmly out to the side so it doesn't dip into that little edge. All right, this probably is not the nicest sewing, but you're getting the idea of how it's done. All right. Okay, ooh, we're zipping. We're just about done this part. All right, and then when we get to the end, back stitch. Beautiful. Okay, cut it off. All right. Oh, you guys have been so good. So good. Okay, back to the front. We got one more seam to do. Okay, so there's a body of our bag. We have our feature fabric, our accent fabric, and our bias binding, and then our mesh. Okay, looking pretty good. That's where it ends. You do not do any more wrong sides together. We are now going to put right sides together. So let me just pull this one inside out so you can see. We made a nice seam, and then we covered that one with the bias binding. So this seam is the only one that's on this one's on the inside. Okay, so look at the pattern, make sure we read it right. Okay, so it was wrong sides. Now sew the body of the bag into a tube, sewing right sides together along the pieced edges, matching seams and trims, and then you cover it with the last seam. All right, so there's Okay, so we put right sides together this time. Kind of match up our two seams so that they match. There we go. And then we sew this one up on a 1/4 inch. All right, here we go. Back to the camera. Close up. Okay. Sewing machine's getting quite the workout today. Okay, it's a 1/4 inch again. And we're going to start back stitch. Okay, good. Go forward. All right, now hold your meshes together, hold your edges together. You can pin this, but of course, you know, like the ironing machine, the iron, it's not with me. We just have me without pins and an iron. So we're just going to put the two edges together and go. Okay, so we're coming close to our first connection, so make sure our lines are lined up. We'll trim off anything that is kind of excess afterwards. That's not a worry. She says to trim things, and we're going to cover this seam anyways, so we're not too worried. Now that's a lot of bulk, so go slow over that edge. Okay, and now let's line this one up. That guy. I wouldn't worry about too much about matchy. We're covering it. So let's just get that 1/4 inch sewn and go. And there we got a big lump there. Hold for a sec while I get the last pieces together. All right. Okay, we're just about done. I actually did this with my other one instead of with a 1/4 inch piecing foot. I actually used my walking foot, and it's got a 1/4 inch on it, so it kept all my layers together fairly nicely. All right, and there's our inside seam on our bag. So let's have a look over here. There it is. Okay, now tricky part. We take the bias binding. We don't open it up. Well, kind of open it the first layer, and you're just going to lay your seam into the binding. And you probably really do need pins to do this, which I don't have. But you tuck it in, and you do a single stitch to hold that edge down. Everything's tucked inside, and you've covered your last seam. Like that. Okay. All right, back to the sewing machine. Oh, you guys are so good hanging in there. I'll tell you one more joke. What did the pig say on the beach? I'm bacon. Yep, I'm bacon. All right. Tuck it in between the two layers of fold. Fold it down and stitch. We're going to stitch right along the inside edge. So there's a skinny foot, skinny edge on this foot. So we're going to follow the skinny edge. Okay, and we're going to, the pedal keeps sliding away on me here. We used to have a thing called a Steady Betty when I first started working here. And it was a mat that used to go underneath your foot pedal so it wouldn't slide away. Well, I had only been working here a couple of days, and of course, in those days, I was working with and still am working with Betty. And so the lady came in and was asking for a Steady Betty, and I said, "Oh, I've got a Steady Betty," and I introduced her to Betty. She was not amused, and that's when I found out sometimes my jokes aren't always appreciated. Betty just kind of rolled her eyes at me, but yeah. Sorry to the poor lady who thought I was being silly, which I probably was. All right, so Steady Betty would be a thing, or else a piece of that foamy stuff that you can get just to hold the pedal in place because it wants to slide around a lot. Okay, so open up that seam and put it inside and tuck it and cover it. So that little seam, okay, now we've got to go over our big lump here, okay? So You know, this guy just kind of just motors right through the lump. He doesn't seem to care. He's pretty good. Right. Guess that's why they say that they can go through 6 layers of denim. Well, we're going to put it to the test next week when we put on the denim bottom and the denim straps, and we'll see how that works on the thicker material. All right, so far, so good, you guys, and we're almost finished our body of our bag. There we go. We can tuck that thing in. Oh, that's so cool. Sorry, I know this is kind of a long session. The next 2 will be kind of long because we're got to put that bottom on, and it'll take a little bit. All right, we've got our seam done, and our body of the bag is complete. So let's go over and just trim this off. Okay, this is why I just left it, because there we go. There's our body of our bag. So let's turn it right side out. And there it is. Pretty cool. Anyways, so it's kind of like the other one. We have the feature fabric at the bottom. Let's do it this way. Feature fabric at the bottom, the accent fabric and the mesh, and it's all put together with right seams on the outside and covered with bias binding. And then on the inside, you do the right sides together for a change, and you cover it with the bias binding. So all your seams are covered. There's nothing that will snag. And there, I have a pair started. I got one in the blue and one in the white. And I did the same bottom fabric, but my accent fabric was different on each of them, and so was the bias binding. All right, so next week, let's go front. Oh, it's a little hot. Got pink cheeks. I've been out in the sunshine too much. Next week, we will put the bottom on our bag, and we will put the top closure on the bag, and we will have our travel bag ready to go. All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging in there. I've just got a couple of notices to let you know about at my sewing room this week. Throughout the summer, we're going to be having social sewing, and that's available on some Fridays and Saturdays. It's all listed in our calendar for the month of July, end of June, beginning of July. It starts at 10:30 in the morning, runs till 4:30. So you, for $10, you come in and use our tables where the irons are set up. Bring all of your projects with you, everything you need. We have refrigerator, there's tea, coffee, there's water. Well, some water this week anyways, and come with your friends and have a little sew along. And that's a Fridays and Saturdays. Check the calendar for the dates and then just call and book. Yeah, call my sewing room. Okay, so coming up in July, we have the wonderful presentation called How's It Made Batik by Rob from Trentex. That will be Friday, July 12th. It starts at 10:30 in the morning and goes till noon. It will be very interesting to see how batik is actually made and enjoy a few door prizes and wonderful things from Rob. That's Rob from Trentex. Also coming up near the end of the month, of course, is the Kimberbell Day. Now, Kimberbell Day is a day that Kimberbell is posting. You can go right to their website and sign up. They have a free digital download design for you for that day for signing up. And then you can watch what's going to happen, what new events are coming, all that sort of interesting things. It goes from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. our time. Now, if you want, you do all of that. But if you want to come in and do a watch party with the rest of us, we will be here on Saturday, July 27th, starting at 9, going to 1. We're going to have a watch party. And of course, I will be there. Refreshments will be there. And we can watch it together and have some fun. It is $5 to register here at the store, plus tax, to come and spend the morning with me from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. doing Kimberbell Day. It's a watch party. All right. Those are our announcements coming forward in the month of July. And I guess that's it for Wacky Wednesday at my sewing room. Thank you for your patience. We'll finish off these bags next week and you'll be ready to travel. Right on. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll